back to New Patients Now. Flint Geyer, your host as always. And today I actually am excited to introduce a recent episode that I actually did with Marc Wagner on DentalBytes. We covered everything from front desk performance to AI to leadership and patient experience. And if you are looking for a way to grow your practice, get more new patients without having to spend another $7,000 a month on marketing, you are going to enjoy this conversation.
Where are we going here? Oh, we're over here. Marc Wagner here. Another fun episode of DentalBytes. I enjoy these episodes quite a bit. I'm joined by another fella that also does a podcast. So it's always fun when you have sort of the dueling piano vibe going on. That sounds good. It looks good. I blow it every single time. I don't ever claim to be a professional at this. This is just, it's my thing. I've got Flint here from the Scheduling Institute. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Just like a Plinko, like we just do, and we're into this conversation. I want to start
doing pianos.
Yeah, like this is it really has like whenever I have somebody that has like a proper that studio is amazing. You got a cool little telephone and that LED logo in the background is pretty awesome. That's you got a nice setup. How do you like doing the podcast? See, how do you find it? What do you get the most out of it?
It's funny, when we first thought about doing it, it's like, well, how many do you do? How often do you do them? What do you talk about? I'm like, we talk about the same stuff we talk about all the time, and you do it as much as you can, I guess, right? That seems to be the way it goes. So it's like The first few were very much just so like educational, like let's talk about this topic and really dive in on these. But what I've really enjoyed was really this, the conversational, just, hey, what's going on in the industry, what's happening in practices. And, selfishly, it also means that I'm not doing a lecture, which I'm sure nobody really likes to be lectured to, right? People appreciate conversations. So excited to be able to do this again with you.
Yeah, I'll echo that. Like I started these with like I had a script. I always had, okay, here, I want to ask these questions. But I maybe got to one or two of those. And the best, I felt the best ones just kind of flowed into whatever they were going to become that day, as long as you have some sort of guideline and you're not talking about dinosaurs, I guess, you want to stay within, the niche. But you're a little bit about the Scheduling Institute so that we can, the listeners have an idea of where you're coming from. I know that, it was your dad that kind of started it off, and then you've taken over. Let's kind of dive in there, and then we'll see where she goes.
Yeah. So high level, right? So my father, Jay Geyer, founded the Scheduling Institute back in the late 90s, and was actually primarily serving in the chiropractic market. And then years and years go by, and more dentists are coming into the rooms and becoming clients. And over time, it was a dental takeover, right? To where, over the last almost 30 years now, we've been serving probably 80% of our customers are dental and dental specialists, practice owners. And it all began with a cassette tape training kit for that person at the front desk of how to be better at just converting the inbound opportunity of new patients into people who walk through the front door. And that turned into in-person trainings in clients' practices, and now 36,000 in-office trainings later, and we do 25 different trainings. He's now running the Practice Growth Institute, which is a practice coaching business. But ultimately, it all came down to helping solve a problem for these doctors, and then helping to solve the next one. And every iteration of the business really was just great. When you solve this, what else happens? How can we help with that? And it's been a pleasure to be a part of it now for almost 10 years. I say full-time myself, because I got to do some unpaid work in the mailroom when I was like 12. But actually here, which I never thought was going to be my path. If I'm being honest, we were talking earlier. I thought I was going to play in the NFL. I was football, and it's like, well, that didn't work out. Too short, too slow. A few other things, but it's been fantastic, and I love getting to spend time with these doctors. And a lot of our work is with the teams, and excited to talk about a little bit of that with you today. But not to ramble on about us. Ultimately, we just help make the practice, the business side of the practice, run a little more smoothly, a little more productively, and doing so in a way that ideally is just going to better serve the patient. Because when we can do that, everybody wins.
Absolutely. I'll bring this. This is my first exposure. I don't know if you can see this, but this was a study that you guys did, and I threw the graphic right over your face there.
Perfect.
I've got a doc that I've worked a little bit with in the past, Dr. Dennis Marangos, that's been down to your working with your team over the years and raved about it. And he was doing a presentation for a group of doctors here in BC, and he brought this stat up that you guys put together. And this is kind of like, so from my perspective, I'm working sort of more on the marketing side of things. But this stat here really blew me away. And when you kind of touched on sort of the opportunity and the solution side of things, like the folks at the front of the practice, we don't really need to dive into each stat here. I'm sure that the viewers have seen those stats. Now I'll read them out in a bit here, but like there's all these clinicians spending all this time and money and energy on the CE aspect of their business to grow their scope of practice and do more cool things. But like I've been on CallRail and listened to the front end team, talking to patients calling into the practice, and it's not like, I don't want to throw shade like on that front end. Like this isn't like a poo-poo to them, but it's so cool. And I don't know that there's any other business like the Scheduling Institute out there that's doing what you guys do to empower the front end teams to essentially, we can dive into it, but it really is kind of the sales engine of the practice. It's the customer facing, patient facing part of the business. Like it's the first experience the patient has with that particular practice. It's like how they get the vibe, right? That first phone call in is mission critical, especially these days when we kind of backtrack and talk about the marketing aspect. Like if folks are the patient calling into the practice doesn't get a response within an X amount of time, they're flipping down the list. And whether or not you're the right practice for them, people are all about like now these days. So how do you navigate that, especially with, I walk through some of these practices, and Dolores has been there for 40 years, right? How do you jump into these situations and really kind of reverse engineer and empower these folks? And obviously there's a big, I'm sure there's a big to do with like the different character types in the practice and how everybody communicates, and maybe a sprinkling of leadership in there is a big part. Where does it all begin?
Yeah. I mean, gosh, you hit on a ton there. And I think
you could take it away from here, Flint.
Yeah. Well, I want to kind of, I'll pop around, right? So I think when you think of the marketing component to it, right? And for a long time, because when my father started the company, he was the marketing director in a multi-location clinic. And so, I always joke whenever I get a chance to speak in front of a group of doctors, it was like literally like new patients had to go into that practice, or like I didn't get baby food, right? So like essentially
Yeah.
when I was an infant, right, the sustenance was paid for by new patients. And so the fact that now I'm here today and doing a New Patients Now podcast and all this stuff is just kind of a funny full circle thing. But his whole discovery was you can do all the marketing in the world, but marketing doesn't just deliver patients through the front door, right? And that moment, to your point, that's the magic moment. It's how do you get that person who generally knows that they need what you have to offer to just cross the threshold of the front door? Because that moment, there's some really predictable economics of when that person literally just walks through the front door for the first time, you can predict roughly what they're going to spend with you over time. But that number is so just uneducated in the industry because we're so focused on what's right in front of me, right? I know, if I were to ask a doctor, hey, what is the average Invisalign case in your practice, right? They know it, right? Yeah. So if a patient is a candidate and they offer it and the patient says no, right? Like I feel that visceral, like, that sucks, man. Like that would be great for them. It's going to get them a great result. And it's $4,500 that could have come into the practice that didn't. Well, that same feeling, that same level of intentionality just doesn't really exist in many practices, really most practices around, well, what about that person who wants to come into the office that never makes it through the front door? Because it's probably in the neighborhood of $3,000 to $3,500 US just when they walk through the front door of what they're going to spend on average over time. And yeah, some people won't spend a lot, but some people will spend tens of thousands of dollars over time.
I heard some stat like $60,000 over a lifetime. So
it can be. It's totally possible, right? Yeah. So we try and be pretty conservative with it because, if you know this as well as I do, right? If you're in the marketing space, you're like, patients worth $60,000. They're like, yeah, right. Yeah. So we try and keep it conservative and believable, but there's just such an opportunity there, right? But it's not where the doctor spends all their time. And I think you made a great point about, Dolores or whatever the archetype is of that lady who's sitting up at the front, right? The biggest discovery, and I think what we really try and drive home is, it is not Dolores's fault that she doesn't know, number one, how important the conversation is, and two, how to really effectively have it with that prospective new patient. Like, it's crazy how many times you will listen to a call and we actually don't even know it's a new patient. Like we don't even identify that. So many practices will say, we're scheduling all the new patients that call, but if you listen to the calls, which to your point, you're doing on the marketing side, it's you can point out and say, no, that was a new patient. They're like, well, no, they didn't say, hey, I'm a new patient and I want to schedule. So, right. But again, that's just process, right? It's system. So I think it's elevating that position of, every time you do your job well, you're actually bringing in whatever, $3,000 US every time they walk through the front door. Not, hey, keep doing your job of just answering all these questions, right? Because that's when it turns into a perpetual complimentary dental Q&A hotline, which, ChatGPT exists. You don't need to be running that Q&A hotline inside your practice for free, right?
Yeah, right. And I think, folks are more informed these days. And they see, especially you touched on the Invisalign thing. I don't know in your neck of the woods, but across Meta, you see these come in for Invisalign ads. Just, we're almost training our prospective patients to become shoppers. Hey, so-and-so practice down the streets offering free whitening for life as well, or whatever that might be. But how important is it to just, the whole sales, it's like a bad word, right? in the medical space. But how much is it all about just, taking care of people. These again, back to the whole clinical side of things, and the oral health versus overall health conversation. It's not just throwing this fluff out there. Intervention in these oral health issues out there is more time on these people's, on their clocks. They get more years in life. Especially you talk about like these doctors that are trained in airway and sleep and all that stuff. So how does that conversation work with keeping things on that track? Is that where do you begin on that front when it comes to the dirty word sales?
Right.
Was there motivators there? Like what's successful on that front?
And I think to your point, for a long time, and it's probably still the case, right? That word is like a no-no, right? I do think there's been a little bit of a shift to being more okay saying that in the industry. Like even in the last 10 years that I've been here, like I think it's changed to a degree, but we always see it in like, get a kick-ass treatment coordinator, right? And they'll just be a closer, right? It's like, well, yeah, that's a part of it, right?
Yeah.
And the doctor has their part, which, we find most effective is when the doctor is the clinical expert in the room and then can remove themselves from the financial conversation, and we can empower somebody to do that job really well. Right. That is effective. But the problem is there's so many touch points in the patient experience before that moment that are not sales, but they are, right? It's what is the experience and the psychological, I hate to say setup because that makes it sound negative, but like, what are we doing to ethically influence this person to make a decision that's best for them?
Yeah.
Right. And that requires, it starts with the tone the first time you call and feeling like the person on the other end like cares whether or not you get the help you're looking for. Or if they're doing some phony, overly warm greeting, right? Yeah. Like it's funny, you can have both. But then what happens when I walk in, right? Like, does it feel as if I was prepared for when I walk into your office? Or does it feel like every other practice I've ever been to where, the classic is the sliding glass with the paper that's like halfway hanging off. And, it's like, sit down, we'll be with you in a second, enjoy the waiting room. Right. So, and then the news is on, and at least, I guess I've never watched the Canadian news, but here at least it's all negative.
It's all negative here too. Yeah. That's how they sell it. Yeah.
So it's like, let me watch something depressing while I sit here and wait after feeling as if I was not prepared for in any shape, form, or fashion. And this is all happening accidentally, right? This isn't, no doctor and no team in practice is doing this on purpose. It's the dissonance that gets created over time of going into the same office every day, over and over and over again, doing your job, treating the patients, right? And all the while, the thing that you go home and remember the most is going to be the 2 people who complained, not the 25 people you helped, right?
Yeah.
So that's the challenge that we have to really kind of, and this is why I love being able to go in and do the in-person training, is because we get to just take a day and get them out of that. Like, you're still in the practice, but we're talking about, hey, how do we deliver something better to the patient, and then just watch how the patients respond. Right. So coming back, full circle to the sales question, we have a core value here that's everyone's in sales. Now, does that mean that everyone is going to actually sell things? No, but everyone should be promoting the thing that's going to be best for the customer. Right. And I think when we can do that in a practice, it's make it easy for them to schedule, make them feel as if they've been prepared for and they are welcome and they're a part of something. And then that you truly are trying to help them based on what is most important and maybe most concerning to that individual, right? And if we can do all those things, then this dirty sales word doesn't even feel like sales.
Yeah.
But that, it takes work. It's easier said than done.
Yeah. The folks that I see have the most success with it are the ones that, have gone and done all the CE, and they can do a lot in practice. And then it's more or less, this stuff is happening in your mouth, sir. Like, here's the list, here are your options. Like, this is what happens, not like fear tactics or scare tactics. It's like actualities, like just reality check type stuff. And then delivering it in sort of a conservative way. Like, I get your financial concerns here, but if we're not going to do this root canal, this is what it's going to mean in the future, and sign on the dotted line, and away you go. But
and it's fair, right?
Yeah.
To have hesitation with that.
Yeah.
But most people too exist in how they see money, right? Which is another big challenge, because if you're the beauty of this business is the facts are the facts. And if you have an issue and nothing gets done, we know it's going to happen and it's going to be much worse. So great. Let's just present those facts as they are. If it's bad, it should sound bad, right? We shouldn't make it sound less bad because you feel uncomfortable. That's actually not really serving the patient as well as you could. And then my favorite is not presenting the best option because of my assumption of your financial position, right? Mm-hmm. So we really believe, hey, if it's bad, make it seem as bad as it is. Don't overdo it. And then if you have an option that is the best, that's going to get the best result, the last the longest, right? All the positive benefits. Well, we should probably present that one first.
Yeah. And
let the patient choose. You don't force them to do it.
I think that's the bottom line, isn't it? It's the perception that I think the industry has is, the industry gets bad rap sometimes for maybe the folks that are irresponsible when it comes to presenting the cases.
Absolutely.
and maybe charging the wrong thing. So I think there's a conscious sort of like that decision made from the clinic side before it's presented. But if you're doing the right thing for the patient, there's nothing, you're not doing anything wrong there. And to the public, these are medically, like, they go to school for 8 to 10 years. Like, what they're doing is medical procedure. Like, it's expensive, a lot of these things. But
if you start low and then go to the more expensive one, that's what's going to make me as the patient feel like, oh, well, because I said yes to this, now he's trying to upsell me, right?
Yeah.
And that is like an inadvertent, because we think, well, let me offer this less expensive one because I don't know if they're going to want to do the more expensive one that's better. And then by no fault of the doctor or the team member, right, that patient now has a perception that now they're trying to upsell me, right, on what I thought was already going to solve my problem.
Yeah. I like, especially to the new grads getting out of school, like, one thing that I always suggest is, like, get connected with a really good laboratory, because they're going to if you present that case to the laboratory, they're going to have like the whole shopping list of the possible treatments, right? Like, that should circumnavigate any sort of concern that you would have that you're not performing, you're not doing your due diligence and carrying out, your conservative options, right?
Right. Right.
But I think a lot of it are like, what's your feel? Are a lot of these folks, a lot of these practices just kind of flying blind and they have a perception of what everybody else is doing, and like the status quo thing, like you talked about the front the receptionist area, you just missed the fish tank, that was it. But you had all the other points, the news, right? How much of
dirty fish tank.
Yes, yeah, yeah. How much of it is just that's there? Everybody just kind of maybe falls into a groove, right? They just fall
Yeah.
into what they understand to be that's the way.
Yeah.
How hard is it to knock people off of that and get them sort of retrained?
Yeah. It depends. And I think it's such an industry of just observation of great. What did the dentist that I went to, how did they set up their office? Right. So the one person at the front desk, like startup practice, one person at the front who's also doing a bunch of other things and answering the phone while the doctor's in the back, right? Well, that model exists for the person who has no other team members, right? That model yet then turns into the same thing with more people. So our favorite example is you have a practice, you have 18 people on your team, you're doing, I don't know, 2-3 million bucks a year, and we still are answering the phones at the front desk as opposed to having someone who's just there to greet the patients, right? Like there's no reason. It's actually no benefit to the patient for you to answer the phone there. If anything, it makes them feel like you're more concerned with the phones than you are with the people who are there in person. But the only reason that happens is just because we're copying the same model of there's someone who sits at the front and answers the phone and does all the administrative things, right? So there's countless examples of that. That's just my favorite one because it's the one I'm most involved in a day to day. And I don't think people spend enough time in other offices, right? If I have a room of 50 doctors and I ask this question almost every time, it's like, hey, how many offices have you been in, right? So did this a month and a half ago, maybe, and it was like 2, 3, 4, and I was like, first of all, so if it's 2, it's the one you went to as a kid and it's yours. Like that's crazy. Right? You were the same one for your whole life, and then you became a dentist. Like,
Yeah.
and the most in the room is like, I don't know, 6 or something, right? And then our trainers who are in hundreds and hundreds of offices, right? Is my favorite when someone will be like, well, what do you know, right? You're younger than me. It's like, well, they've been in hundreds of times more practices than yours, and maybe they've observed some things that would be helpful. But I had one of our clients on 2 weeks ago, I think, on the podcast, and I asked him that question, and I thought it was great because he's only been in practice for like 5 or 6 years, and he's like 16. He worked in 16 practices before he opened his.
That's got to be super helpful, hey?
Extremely. So
Yeah.
to me, I was like, okay, this is the only thing I want to talk about. What did we like? What did we not like? How did that help with you setting up your practice? And, on the grand scheme of things, he's 6 years in. They're tripling the production of the average practice in America.
Awesome.
And it's no surprise. Like, he got to see some other things. He saw what worked. He saw what didn't. He figured out where he needed help, and that's worked out really well for him. So the industry is very isolating. We hear about that a lot, but there's also not a lot of action being taken to like, hey, let's go see what how other people do it. And I don't know if that's like a competitive thing or what, but you'd think if there's 200,000 people who do my job in the US, like I should just go check it out.
But arguably, Flint, like how many of those doctors walk into their own practice, like having
another
sort of
conversation
with the perspective of like what the
Yeah.
patient might feel,
Yeah.
that's a big one too. Like take yourself out on a 30,000 foot view and be somebody that has no idea about this place, and walk through
It's
the door.
hard.
Yeah, it's hard, right? Yeah.
Because you can even say, right? I mean, and I'm sure you've gone through this, right? Like we can say this about our own businesses, and you're just like, yeah, all right, let's put ourselves in the seat of the customer, right? And let's think through their eyes. But it's really hard to do that yourself, right? And the ones who do it repetitively, right? They get into a groove of it. And sometimes they're like, well, I ask my team and they say everything's fine. It's like, yeah, but you pay them and they don't want to upset you. So they might not totally be honest with you, not because they want to lie, but it's just like they don't want to shake the it's like it's kind of human nature there. But I think it's a huge point, right? And it's one of the things that if you can get somebody over that, like take off the blinders and just walk through the front door every once in a while, not your side entrance, and just like be as skeptical as possible, right?
Yeah.
So who's the most skeptical person you know? Bring them with you, right? Like,
yeah, sure, yeah.
And then don't hurt your feelings.
Yeah. Like that's the thing. You got to put the emotional side aside, like the emotional part aside too. I think people are so critical. Maybe they have a hard time with it because they'll beat themselves up about it, and it's it's like everything else. Like we tend to just bury our problems and ignore them and continue on and deal with it.
Yep.
I was a dental rep. I was just, thinking about walking through so many doors, and like my experience walking through the door was always like the gatekeeper. They always like, no, you don't have like the doctor doesn't have any time for you. So that's my, but yeah, like that's an interesting thought, isn't it? And I like the idea of jumping into the practice and you guys do in-house training. How much of that is sort of like interviewing each team member and finding out maybe they're in the wrong part of the practice? Maybe they would be better suited as a different entity in the practice. Like, is that, and then how much of that is like, systems obviously is another major part of that. Like what combination of things are you doing when you're parachuting into these places?
Yeah, most of the time we're going to start with a systems-based approach, right? And really focusing in on that. If you think about the pipeline of new patient flow into a practice, great. What happens at initial contact? How are we making sure that they're actually walking through the front door? What's happening then? And those are full team processes, right? Because everyone touches that experience in a way. And you want to get, like, our first challenge is getting everybody in there to like see themselves as being in the new patient business. Because without a consistent flow of new patients, practices eventually shrink, plateau, or unfortunately go out of business, right? And we don't feel like that all the time, right? Planet DDS, who obviously is mostly DSOs, they just came out with a 8,500 location study. And it was the big takeaway was there's a split. There's practices who are growing, practices who are dying, and then there's just like this middle ground, right? And the number one thing that they pulled out of the practices who were growing at 14% plus a year was a consistent flow of new patients into the practice. But for the solo practice, solo doc, thinking that means they have to see all the patients themselves, right? There's almost like that blinder of, wait, no, that means more work and I already feel like I'm overworked, right? So a lot of what we have to do is go in and help simplify some of their systems to where they can do more with the time and the people and the space that they already have. And then we can get into, hey, let's talk about leadership structure. Let's talk about scaling through associate development. And sometimes you can jump straight there, depending on the how established the practice is. But more often than not, it's, hey, let's get some consistent systems in place and see what happens, right? Because it's going to work. The question is, when it works, what breaks next, right? Yeah. And how do we pinpoint the next opportunity? Because a lot of times we don't know how big of an opportunity that might be downstream until we put a little bit of pressure to it,
Sure. Yeah. There's a ton of variables, isn't there? A lot of moving parts for sure. What is the first thing that usually breaks? What are you seeing? Like, is it somebody that doesn't follow the systems? Is it a people thing that usually breaks?
No, I mean that's an easier solve, right? So we do the training, but we also have an accountability component to it. So it's pretty much, we're watching that as we go. Typically, what's going to happen, and whenever I talk with a group of our new members, I'll say, hey, we're your team members in the certification program, which is the ongoing kind of accountability and support for the team up front. Initially, it gets us to find out, are they compliant, right? So just they got the training, are they willing to do it, right? Mm-hmm. And most of the time people are, right? People don't not want to do good at their job, and if they don't want to do good at their job, that's a great lesson, right? And it's worth finding out. But unfortunately, sometimes people just let it happen for 20 years and never find out.
Yeah.
But then it becomes, once that is the standard, right? Once we've raised the standard there, we've habitualized the behaviors that make it effective, right? Well, what is the outside influence that's going to get them to almost subconsciously turn it off, right? And that most often comes from the back. So whether it's, we now find out, hey, we might be moving slow. We may actually be clinically moving slow, and we never knew it because we didn't have the volume that was going to actually indicate, hey, wait a minute, we're not efficient, right? We felt efficient because we didn't have to actually be efficient, right? Mm-hmm. And that can show up in a lot of ways. That can show up by the doctor walking in and always saying that they're tired and, oh my gosh, we have so many patients. And it's like, well, okay, well, if I am your team member and you're saying that to me, even if I'm not doing it on purpose, when I have an opportunity to go above and beyond to help you get another customer who's going to spend $3,000 over time, I might not do it because the perception is there's this fatigue, right? When really that's just the problem that the doctor now needs to go solve or find the answer to, right? Or the clinical team complains, I can't believe you put that patient there, right? And they complain about one out of the 17 more that they had. And all we hear is the complaint because that's how we operate, right? Mm-hmm. It's the negative news is always the most front and center. So in helping that doctor navigate those conversations of, hey, this is good, this is not bad, this is a growing pain, let's talk through, okay, why is that creating conflict between the front and the back? Great. How do we solve that? Do we need to work on the efficiency on the schedule, or do we need to work on the efficiency and how quickly we're moving in the back while being able to maintain a really excellent clinical program and the experience for the patient, right? So it can be all over the place, but most of the time when there's any significant issue, it's going to be somewhat related there.
Yeah, I can see all sorts of, you're talking about a scaling problem, right? People get so comfortable in that regular flow, and you talked about 20 years. I'm sure you might even see some teams that have just been doing the same thing over the last 20 years. It's that wake up call it changes sort of that whole routine, the daily routine. And we're such creatures of habit. That's and so you the cycle that you guys are working with folks, it's a year commitment, isn't it? I remember you were talking last time. It was it
depends on what we're going to do. So when we're going in and we're doing team training, we have people in our university, we're coaching the doctor, right? That might be a 24-month engagement, but typically when we're coming in and we're really laying out a training plan, that's typically a 12-month initial plan.
Yeah. It makes so much sense. You have to break those old habits, especially those.
Yeah, because for me to come to your office one time, right? For a long time, we would do, great, you do this one training, which, great. And it was a 90-day engagement. But think about someone who's been doing something the same way for 15 years.
Oh, yeah.
And then we're going to change that, dramatically change the result, and they're going to stick to it, right? The likelihood of that happening is just not very high based on human behavior. So it still worked for a long time, but we've just found that building in the ongoing accountability component and the support for those team members or any new hires or any turnover, right? It kind of pre-solves a lot of the other issues that we've seen over the years.
How do you get teams excited about it? That must be a big part of it too. Is there any incentive? Yeah. Is there like points or rewards or what are you putting there?
Like, yeah, all of the above. So, number one, I mean, our training team is fantastic. Like they do a really, really good job of setting those days up to be, hey, this isn't about what's being done wrong. This isn't about like pointing out like something that's wrong with you. This is about, we all want the practice to be successful because that creates opportunity for all of us, right?
Yeah.
And if we serve the patients well, we can do that. So let's work on some ways to just improve that today, right? And then we spend a lot of time on why we're doing these things. Like when we come and do a training, we're not going to just dive right into the content, which I know some people are like, can we just do this in 4 hours and just give us the content and move on with our day? It's like,
no, that's not what it's about. Yeah.
It's not going to, like we could, it's not going to work. And then you're going to come back and say that it didn't work. And so I don't want that for you or me.
Yeah.
Right. So
first we need to break you, right?
Yeah. Like it takes the why, it takes the how, and then it takes some significant live role play so that you can actually go and do it with the patient tomorrow. Right. Yeah. Otherwise it's really challenging. But I think in terms of, that's the setup, right? But then we teach effective incentivization strategies so that they can be a part of the growth. We actually have a rewards platform for our front desk team members who are in that certification program. So we try and make it exciting and kind of create a community of those team members too, who can, ask questions of each other. It's like, hey, I know we're across the country or in different countries, but we're going through the same stuff. We have the same issues. We're dealing with the same patients being difficult in the same ways, right? Yep. So we try to really be intentional with that group because everybody else in the building has a certification they can put on the wall.
Yeah, that's cool.
Except for them.
Yeah, like exactly. It's really, and I've been through doors too, where it's the team's about to go to some fun conference, but the front end team's like left out of that fun. So a lot of it is like back of house and front of house, being all this cohesive entity, and they all have their own. I need a little sip of some coffee here. I think the cohesive teams need to all feel like they're a part of it, like, and that's there's a like it's like a puzzle piece, like everybody fits and creates the picture together. I feel bad for, like, I remember doing a trip through the interior of BC and stopping in just before a conference and asking the folks at the front end if I'd see them at the show, and a lot of them were kind of sad about it, and like what a great way to feel like you're impactful, and like there's all sorts of training and things to grow the clinical side of the business. This is such a major opportunity, and I see it clear as day. Like I remember seeing that stat and going, oh my God, like that is it's so true. Like the 30% of calls go to voicemail, like that's like, if it's going to voicemail, then they're gone. Like they're going to a different practice. Yeah. What are your thoughts now, like on this whole AI thing moving in? Like that where you're hearing these AI receptionists. What's your feeling on that front? Is it helpful? Does it add to it? Does it make it more complicated? There's sort of like this fear out there that this is going to like take jobs away. What's your perspective on this whole AI front?
Yeah, I think, it's funny you bring up the stat of the unanswered calls, right? Mm-hmm. So, number one, I think what's happening with AI is going to be a really great tool. I don't think it's going to totally replace the human component of the business, right? It's always been a human business. It's a people business. So what I've seen to be really effective is, for years we've tried to get creative with practices on how to bridge the gap of when the calls get answered, and because a lot of what we do is about what happens when you pick up the phone, right? It's about the interaction with the patient and then what happens when they walk in the door and all those things. And we could get closer to 100% answer rate, but really like a super performing practice is going to get to 95, 98%, right? The cool thing that we can do with some of these AI receptionists is, well, on day one, you can take it to 100, right? So if you're at 80 and we dramatically improve the performance of the humans answering the 80, and then you just get something to handle the other 20, well, that's great. We'll take that. Now, are they perfect? No. Are they all working really well? No. And I think my recommendation anytime I have a conversation with someone about it is, let's just make sure that's part of the overall strategy, right? So when you talk about new patient conversion from call to person who walks through the front door, great. That's just one of the tools we're going to use. To think you're going to 100% switch over to that, I think is probably a little quick. I don't think they're going to handle everything well. Some people will get real pissed when they're like, wait a minute.
Can I talk to I want to talk to a human, right? Yeah.
Right? So in the idea that I think will be really effective is like this idea of excellent human service empowered by that technology. Yeah, right. So we want to, and the standard has to be the standard that's set for the people. And if we're going to apply those tools, then you want to make sure that it's being trained to the same standard of the people. So I have one consistent experience, because, if it's dramatically different or worse, then you have to ask the question, well, is that any better than the voicemail? Right. Yeah. For some people, maybe, but at the end of the day, I think it comes down to the consistency and how intentional are we that the tool is going to help in the consistency of excellence, or are we just trying to kind of band-aid a problem?
Yeah.
Well, right. And I think that's a hazard with a lot of the technology that's come into the industry over the last 5 to 7 years is the pitch is great. The pitch is you'll never have to worry about it again. And unfortunately, dentists they love a good pitch of you'll never have to do about it. You'll never have to do it again, right? Yeah. Scanners, lasers, technology, patient communication platforms, AI receptionists, it's all the same. Yeah. If you leverage it, they're great. If you think it's going to solve your problem without having to actually make sure the structure is correct first, it's not. And then you're going to be frustrated again. It'll be no different, right? So that's my long-winded answer.
I love it. And I love the long-winded. I'm the same. I'll go off on a tangent and then go on another tangent. It's exploring the thought. But I fully agree with you. I think, to add to that, it's like a tool is a tool. And it's as good as the user uses it. If you think of carpentry, you can hand somebody a hammer, it doesn't mean they're going to be an amazing framer. There's you have to learn how to learn how to use it.
It's not how it works.
I busted my thumb up, you know what I mean? Over and over again. So I love that. It's all about building good systems, and this technology kind of goes in place. But it's got to be sort of a part of that living and breathing entity. It's got to be it's got to be trained to answer in a way that the humans would also answer that call.
Right. So if you're going to treat it like a team member, right? Even for the people who have the dream of it's going to replace a person, well, then you should probably still treat it like one and give it the same amount of energy to make sure it's productive. Right. So I think the fallacy is you can just turn it on and move on with your life.
Yeah. I mean, pushing against technology too is a slippery slope, right? We're not we're not riding horses anymore. I don't know about what's happening in Atlanta, but here in Vancouver we drive cars and we can fly now.
Yeah, we got cars. They're huge, man.
Yeah. This has been awesome. I'm gonna leave you to it. I feel like we should have this conversation again. There's so much that we can touch on, especially, I think we should have a session where we just dive into talking about how the marketing and the front end just connect and just talk about just that.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be a good one. But how would one get started with your amazing service?
Yeah. So, I mean, the easiest thing to do is if you just go to schedulinginstitute.com, there's a big red button right in the middle. It says take the 5-star challenge. If you do that, we'll do a free assessment of your current patient intake process and really just walk through with you, hey, based on what we know is most effective, here is, based on your numbers, your assessment, what you might be leaving on the table by not having a really solid system in this area of the practice. And so with that, again, it's free. You don't have to do anything with us to get the information. And then also, if you are a reader, a studier, right, I would also recommend checking out The New Patients Now, the book, which I didn't know was going to be in here today, but it is. Go to Amazon.com.
It's not just a prop. Is that a real book? Like the phone's not real?
Book. So this is just my dad's book. There's a brand new edition that just came out. I got to write the foreword for it. We've done some revisions on it. And if you are just like, hey, I want to dive in and like get to work, this would be a great, really inexpensive way to start that process. So it's on Amazon, easy to find.
Beautiful. Awesome. Any other intelligent or witty remarks before I let you flow into the weekend here?
Closing quote.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I appreciate you having me on, Mark. It's a pleasure. And, it's always a good sign when almost an hour goes by pretty quick. So
yeah,
I appreciate you. And hopefully the listeners get some good stuff out of today.
Absolutely. And again, and all my listeners, like, start with this. This is foundational stuff. Like, this is, your team is who you build off of. So you take care of your team, they'll take care of your business. And that's my kind of final thought on it. And then, man, oh man, I'm a huge fan of what you guys are doing.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mark. A fan of what you're doing.
I try. All right. See you later.
Awesome. See ya.